Don't chase people who feed you crumbs. You'll starve your soul while they feast on your attention. Have you ever noticed how some people give you just enough to keep you from walking away, but never enough to make you feel full? That's not love, my friends. That's control disguised as connection. And today, we're breaking that illusion wide open, because the same person who once fed you crumbs will one day find themselves starving for your silence. Before we dive in, make sure you press that like button and subscribe. It tells the algorithm that Stoic clarity still matters in this noisy world. And trust me, you'll want to stay with me till the end, because once you understand this, you'll never look at half-love the same way again. Hey folks, imagine this for a second. You're at a beautiful dinner table, candles lit, plates shining, the smell of something delicious in the air. But when it's your turn to be served, they drop a few crumbs on your plate and smile like they just gave you a feast. And because you're kind, patient, hopeful, you smile back. You say, "It's okay." At least it's something you keep convincing yourself that if you wait long enough, if you love hard enough, if you prove yourself enough, maybe one day they'll finally give you the whole meal. But deep down, you know what's really happening. You're sitting at a table where you're not being fed, you're being tested. And here's the real mind twist. People who give crumbs aren't careless. They're calculated. They've learned that the easiest way to keep someone loyal isn't through giving, it's through almost giving. Because almost keeps you hooked, almost keeps you waiting, almost keeps you chasing what should have been mutual all along. It's like dangling water in front of a thirsty traveler. They'll crawl miles for one drop because the brain doesn't crave love, it craves the reward of the chase. The Stoics knew this. Seneca once said, "The greatest slavery is to be a slave to desire." And that's what crumbs do. They enslave you to desire. They turn your compassion into confusion. They make you think love must always hurt to be real. But no, my friends, love isn't supposed to feel like begging for a seat at your own table. When you finally stop running after crumbs, something magical and a little scary happens. Silence enters the room. The same silence they used to punish you with becomes your weapon. You stop explaining. You stop performing. You stop feeding their need for control. And suddenly, the air changes. They start wondering why the noise stopped, why your energy shifted, why the person they thought would never leave disappeared into calm, unbothered silence. Silence has a strange power. It doesn't shout, it echoes. It turns their comfort into curiosity. It makes them chase their own thoughts at night. While you're healing, they're rewinding every memory, trying to figure out where the control slipped. And that's when the tables finally turn. The one who fed you crumbs starts starving for closure, for attention, for that same energy they once took for granted. But here's the best part. By then, you're not playing the same game anymore. You've outgrown it. You realize you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong person. You're no longer the beggar at their table. You are the feast they'll never taste again. So, my friends, the next time someone offers you crumbs and calls it love, remember, you deserve the whole meal, not leftovers from someone's ego. And when you walk away with calm silence, that's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's self-respect wearing armor. Write this in the comments. I choose my peace. Because that's what this is all about. Choosing peace over chaos, value over begging, presence over performance. And if this message hits home, press the like button, subscribe, and stay with me. Because we're about to dig deeper into the psychology of silence, and trust me, you're going to want to hear what happens next. Number 1. The illusion of enough. They didn't give you love, they gave you just enough to keep you coming back. That's how control hides itself, my friends. Not through cruelty, but through almost. almost effort, almost care, almost love. The illusion of enough is what keeps most people trapped longer than heartbreak itself. Because when someone gives you nothing, it's easy to walk away. But when they give you just enough, your mind starts fighting your soul. You start telling yourself stories to make the imbalance feel okay. Maybe they're just busy. Maybe I'm expecting too much. Maybe love isn't supposed to be perfect. But those maybes are how manipulation survives. It lives in the fog between what you feel and what you try to believe. Imagine standing in front of a beautiful door, but it only opens an inch. You can see the light inside, you can feel the warmth, but you can't step through. Every time you push, they close it slightly, then open it just enough so you never stop hoping. That's what crumbs are. They aren't random, they're control disguised as kindness. It's the push and pull that keeps your emotions dancing in circles. You think they care because they never let you go completely, but that's the trick. They never needed to love you fully to control you. They just needed to keep you close enough to feel it might change. And this is where most people lose themselves. They mistake small gestures for growth. They mistake temporary kindness for transformation. When someone who ignored you suddenly sends a sweet message, your brain lights up like a slot machine that finally hit a win. But here's the thing, their nice moments don't erase the pattern. They are the pattern, because inconsistency is the weapon of emotional control. It teaches you to crave the rare moments of affection instead of questioning why they're rare in the first place. Some of you watching this right now are thinking, but maybe they really tried. Maybe they just don't know how to love, and that's your heart talking, the part of you that wants to believe people will change if you just love them enough. But listen to me. Love isn't supposed to feel like a test you keep failing. Real connection doesn't require you to shrink, wait, or beg. You can't teach someone to value you by staying in the place where they keep proving they don't. Marcus Aurelius once said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The same applies to love. If it's not mutual, stop calling it love. If it doesn't nourish your soul, stop pretending it's enough. That's the hardest truth to swallow. Sometimes the people you do anything for would do anything but meet you halfway. Let's be honest, leaving the almost feels terrifying, because the unknown feels colder than the familiar pain you've learned to survive. You fear that silence will mean losing them forever. You fear that by stepping away, you'll prove their indifference right. But here's the paradox. They already act like you don't matter. The only difference is you're still there to witness it. Once you remove your energy, the illusion cracks. And that's when reality hits them. The person who once rationed affection like currency suddenly feels the weight of your absence, and for the first time, they starve. But to reach that point, you'll have to face your own fears. You'll have to accept that their crumbs were never signs of care. They were signs of how little they thought you needed. You'll have to stop feeding the hope that someday will come. And that's not easy, because the mind clings to patterns like a drowning man clings to driftwood. The fear of emptiness keeps people stuck in half-love longer than they'd ever admit. You keep saying, "What if I leave?" and they finally realize I was the one. But the truth is, that realization never comes from your staying, it comes from your silence. Think of a candle, my friends. If you keep feeding the flame with every breath, it flickers wildly but never burns steady. But when you step back and let the air go still, that's when the light becomes sharp. Silence does that. It sharpens your worth. It shows who's willing to step forward when you stop reaching. Most won't, and that's your proof. Those who do, that's your peace. People often confuse patience with passivity, but patience isn't waiting for them to change. It's waiting for you to heal enough to walk away. Stoicism isn't coldness, it's clarity. It's the art of seeing people as they are, not as you wish they'd be. Once you see that they've only been giving you fragments, you stop negotiating with your hunger. You stop begging for scraps and start feeding your soul. There's a quote I love. If they wanted to, they would. And if they don't, they never will. Simple but brutal, and yet freeing. Because it reminds you that love should never need decoding. If you have to overthink it, explain it, justify it, it's not love, it's emotional taxation, and you deserve better than that. So, what do? You stop. You stop waiting for the door to open. You stop trying to prove your worth to people who can't see it. You stop mistaking inconsistency for depth. You let silence walk ahead of you, and you let it clean the room of anyone who was only there to take. And when they come back, and many will, you'll realize something profound. You no longer need their crumbs because you've learned to bake your own peace. My friends, write this in the comments right now. I'm done with almost. Say it like a promise to yourself, because that's where power begins. Show them, show yourself, show the world that your worth was never meant to be measured in crumbs. And stay with me, because next we're going deeper into the psychology of how these dynamics flip. You'll see exactly how silence, once feared, becomes the gravity that pulls them back. The same people who fed you fragments will start chasing the calm they can't control. Stay tuned, because that's when the story truly begins. Number 2. The trap of partial love. Half love is more dangerous than hate, because at least hate makes you leave. That's the trap, my friends, the quiet, invisible snare that catches people with good hearts and strong emotions. The trap of partial love doesn't feel like rejection. It feels like confusion. You're not ignored completely, but you're never chosen fully. You're kept in that middle zone where everything feels possible, but nothing ever happens. They say the right things, sometimes even do the right things, but it never lasts long enough to build peace. And you tell yourself, maybe this is what real love looks like. Maybe it's just complicated. But real love isn't complicated. Manipulation is. Imagine a person standing in front of you, holding a cup of water. You've been walking through a desert, thirsty for connection, craving emotional safety. They hand you the cup, but only let you sip. Just enough to keep you alive, not enough to quench your thirst. So you stay, because the brain doesn't crave abundance, it craves relief. And they've learned to give you just enough relief to keep you dependent. That's not love, that's control dressed as compassion. The trap of partial love works because it feeds off your empathy. You keep thinking, if I can just show them how much I care, maybe they'll finally see me. But they already see you. They just know how much you're willing to give without asking for anything back. The Stoics called this attachment without awareness. You attach not because it's healthy, but because it feels familiar. You're addicted not to the person, but to the pattern. Partial love is like emotional caffeine. It gives you a rush, then leaves you shaking when it fades. You start analyzing every message, every pause, every sigh. When they reply fast, you feel safe. When they delay, your stomach turns. That emotional swing becomes the rhythm of your days. And what you don't realize is, this rhythm isn't love, it's conditioning. You've been trained to mistake anxiety for chemistry, inconsistency for depth, and withdrawal for mystery. That's why you can't stop thinking about them even when you know they're bad for you, because you're not chasing love anymore, you're chasing equilibrium. You tell yourself, maybe they're just scared, or maybe they've been hurt before. And sure, maybe they have. But that doesn't excuse the imbalance, because when someone truly values you, they don't give you breadcrumbs to prove they care. They build consistency. It's not about grand gestures. It's about showing up without being asked. The truth is, partial love isn't fear-based. It's ego-based. It's the behavior of people who want your loyalty without giving you their presence. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." The modern version of that wisdom is this: if you want peace, be content to look heartless when you walk away from half effort. Because people will call you cold when you stop feeding their comfort. They'll call you distant when you stop playing their game. But silence isn't cruelty. It's clarity. It's you finally saying, "I will no longer settle for maybe." And I know, folks, it's hard to walk away from almost. You've invested your energy, your time, your belief. You've built a version of them in your head that's always one step away from becoming who you hoped they'd be. But ask yourself, how many times have you been one step away from peace and still chosen chaos because you couldn't let go? That's the trap. You're not stuck because they're powerful. You're stuck because you keep waiting for the next drop of water. But here's the beauty. Once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. Once you realize that their affection has an expiration date, you start craving something real: silence, stillness, truth. And when you stop reacting, when you stop trying to remind them of your worth, the spell breaks. Suddenly, they lose their grip, because the game only works when you keep playing. My friends, the only way to win this kind of game is not to play. You can't fix people by giving them more of what they already take for granted. You can't inspire consistency in someone who benefits from keeping you uncertain. So stop explaining. Stop negotiating for love that must be rationed. Let silence do the heavy lifting, because nothing reveals the truth faster than absence. In time, they'll realize what they lost. Not because you screamed it, but because you stopped repeating the same cycle. They'll remember the energy that once revolved around them, the attention, the warmth, the effort, and they'll wonder where it went. But by then, your silence will have rewritten your story. You'll have turned that trap into a mirror, and in it, they'll finally see themselves for who they are. Write this in the comments. I deserve to be complete. Say it out loud, not just for them, but for yourself. Show them that you're not begging for almost anymore. Show yourself that your worth doesn't live in partial love, and show the world that you'd rather walk alone in peace than sit at a table built on crumbs. Stay with me, because what comes next will show you how silence transforms from absence into power. The kind of power that makes them chase what they once took for granted. Number 3. The psychology behind crumbs. When someone gives you less than you deserve, it's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of how much they think they can get away with. That's the psychology of crumbs, my friends. It's not random, it's not accidental, it's strategic. Every delayed text, every half-hearted compliment, every sudden reappearance after silence, all of it is part of a psychological loop. They don't give too little to lose you, and they don't give too much to satisfy you. They feed you just enough to keep your hope alive. That's not affection, it's management. They're managing your expectations, managing your emotions, managing your reactions, like a puppeteer testing how far the strings will stretch before you break. Imagine a person fishing. They throw out a line not to feed the fish, but to feel the pull. That's what people do when they breadcrumb you. Every message, every late night, "Hey stranger," every nostalgic memory they drop. It's not about connection, it's about control. They want to know you're still there, still waiting, still willing. They want to know that no matter how far they drift, they can come back to the same version of you, patient, forgiving, and emotionally available. You see, this kind of behavior plays on a deep human need, the need for closure, for understanding, for fairness. When someone keeps you in emotional limbo, your brain can't rest. It keeps replaying moments, analyzing words, reading between the lines. You think you're searching for answers, but really you're being kept in motion, and motion means attachment. The more you think, the more you invest. The more you invest, the harder it becomes to detach. That's the hidden trick. Keep them guessing, keep them hooked. And it works because the mind hates uncertainty. When someone gives you crumbs, your brain starts filling in the gaps. You build stories to make sense of the inconsistency. You tell yourself, they're busy, or they just don't express love like I do. You rationalize what hurts because admitting the truth, that they simply don't care enough, is too painful. So you create illusions to survive the reality. You make excuses for them because it feels safer than confronting what's real. But here's what Stoicism teaches us. Peace doesn't come from understanding others. It comes from mastering yourself. When you learn to step back from the story you've built, you see the pattern clearly. You realize they're not mysterious, they're predictable. They pull back, you chase. They disappear, you panic. They return, you forgive. And around it goes until you forget what peace even feels like. Epictetus once said, "You become what you give your attention to." And if your attention is trapped by inconsistency, you start becoming inconsistent yourself. You start mirroring their chaos. You check your phone more. You replay conversations. You plan your responses carefully, hoping this time they'll finally notice. You begin orbiting them without realizing they've become the center of your mental universe. That's the true power of crumbs. They don't just starve your heart, they hijack your focus. Let's be real. It's not that they don't know how to love, it's that they don't need to. They've already learned that a few crumbs are enough to keep you from walking away, because deep down they sense your fear. The fear of being forgotten, the fear of silence, the fear that if you stop trying, everything will vanish for good. And so they ration attention the way a dealer rations a drug, just enough to keep you craving. But once you stop reacting, everything changes. When you no longer reply right away, when you stop explaining yourself, when you stop validating their half-effort, the spell breaks. They feel it. The energy they used to feed off begins to vanish. Suddenly, they're the ones refreshing their phone. They're the ones wondering why you went quiet. Because silence exposes what they never wanted to face. Their control was never love. It was dependency disguised as power. The hardest part is letting the silence speak for you, because your instincts will scream, say something, explain, fix it. But that's the exact reaction they're counting on. That's how they know they still have you. So instead, you do the opposite. You step back, you detach, you let time do what your words never could, reveal the truth. And the truth is, people only breadcrumb those they believe won't leave the table. So when you finally stand up, when you stop responding to half-hearted gestures, when you choose peace over confusion, something shifts. They feel the weight of their own emptiness. They start craving what they used to control, because silence has a strange power. It doesn't just remove your voice, it amplifies your absence. And that absence becomes the mirror they can't escape. My friends, write this in the comments. No more crumbs. Say it with conviction. Because you're not walking away out of bitterness. You're walking away out of awareness. You've seen the game for what it is. You're done being managed, measured, and manipulated. You're reclaiming your time, your focus, your worth. Show them, show yourself. Show the world around you that your silence isn't surrender. It's your declaration of independence. And stay with me, because what comes next will show you how that silence, your new discipline, doesn't just free you. It begins to pull them back, one thought at a time, until they realize the feast they lost while feeding you crumbs. Number 4, when you stop reacting, the balance shifts. The moment you stop reacting, you stop being controlled. That's the truth that shakes every manipulative connection to its core, my friends. Power doesn't vanish, it simply changes hands. And when you stop reacting, when you stop explaining, defending, chasing, or proving, that quiet stillness inside you begins to move the entire field around you. The same people who once dictated the rhythm of your emotions suddenly find themselves off balance. Because their control depended on your reaction, it was never about love, it was about leverage. Think of a puppeteer. They pull the strings and the puppet dances. But what happens when the puppet stops moving? The puppeteer looks foolish, powerless, desperate. The show collapses. That's what silence does. It ends the performance. The energy that once fueled their ego begins to turn inward. They start to feel the absence of your reaction like a missing heartbeat. Here's what most people don't understand. Reacting quickly feels like power. It feels like you're taking action, defending yourself, proving your side. But in truth, it's the opposite. Reactivity is dependency in disguise. The more emotionally fast you are, the more predictable you become. And predictability kills respect. When you stop reacting, you create space. And that space is unsettling to anyone who once relied on your emotional responses to feel relevant. They start wondering, did I lose control? Are they gone? Have they moved on? They scroll through old messages, trying to find proof that the connection still exists, but it doesn't, not in the way it used to, because silence rewires the entire dynamic. It shifts attention, energy, and power back where it belongs, with you. It's not easy, I know. Every instinct inside you screams to break the silence. You want to say something, to fix things, to prove you're not cold. But that's the emotional bait, the test. They're not reaching out to connect. They're reaching out to check if the old version of you still exists, the one who rushed to respond, the one who tried to keep the peace, the one who couldn't stand the thought of being misunderstood. But now you're learning a new language, the language of stillness. You're learning that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means control. It means you've finally understood that not every action deserves your reaction. Some moments don't need words, they need boundaries, and silence is the most elegant boundary there is. Seneca said, "To be calm is the highest achievement of the self." Calmness doesn't mean indifference. It means composure under chaos. It means you've stopped letting their inconsistency dictate your inner climate. While they're panicking, wondering, over-analyzing, you're sipping your coffee in peace. That's not arrogance, that's awareness. You see, they expected your fire, your explanations, your emotion, your chase. What they never prepared for was your quiet, your detachment, your stillness that feels like distance but is actually discipline. And that discipline does something profound. It reveals who they are when you're no longer dancing to their rhythm. Without your reaction, their ego deflates, their control evaporates. They realize your energy was the current that kept their game alive. This is where your power begins to show, not in words, but in presence. Because the one who doesn't react becomes the one who dictates the pace. You're no longer pulled into their chaos. They're pulled into your calm. And let me tell you, few things are more magnetic than composure in a world addicted to noise. But yes, it's hard at first. You'll feel that itch to text, to explain, to clear things up. You'll convince yourself that silence means losing. But the only thing you're losing is the illusion that reacting ever helped you win. It never did. It only kept you spinning in a game where every move was designed to drain you. You're breaking that pattern now. You're teaching your emotions to breathe before they speak. You're learning that patience is more powerful than panic, and that self-control isn't repression, it's freedom. When you master that, they'll feel it. They'll sense the change, even in your absence. And when they finally come back, and many do, it won't be because you begged or convinced. It'll be because your silence created gravity. It made them feel the weight of losing access to your energy. And that feeling, my friends, is unforgettable. So write this in the comments. I choose calm over chaos. Say it loud, type it bold, show it to the world. Because your silence isn't passive, it's power with purpose. You're no longer the one reacting, you're the one observing. You're no longer following their rhythm. You've created your own. Stay with me, because in the next part, we'll go even deeper into the art of strategic withdrawal. You'll see how disappearing with discipline isn't avoidance, it's transformation. How the quiet you hold can make the loudest impact of all. Number 5. Strategic withdrawal, turning emptiness into gravity. Disappearing isn't weakness, it's the art of creating presence through absence. Most people think withdrawal means giving up. They think silence means defeat. But that's because they've never understood how powerful stillness becomes when used with purpose. My friends, strategic withdrawal isn't running away. It's the art of shifting energy inward so the other person feels the vacuum you leave behind. It's a quiet revolution. You stop chasing, you stop explaining, you stop trying to prove your worth, and suddenly, everything starts to orbit around your absence. Imagine a powerful magnet being removed from a field of scattered metal pieces. At first, everything goes still. Then, one by one, those pieces start to tremble, not because the magnet moved closer, but because it disappeared. That's what happens when you pull your energy back. The person who once depended on your reactions begins to feel the weight of your silence. It's not instant. It doesn't explode like fireworks. It unfolds like gravity, slow, steady, unstoppable. Here's where most people go wrong. They think withdrawal should be dramatic. They slam doors, post quotes, announce their exit. But real Stoic withdrawal doesn't make noise. It makes impact. You don't vanish to get attention. You vanish to regain control. Because the power of absence lies not in being unseen, but in being unfelt in ways that disrupt comfort. See, the human mind craves patterns. When you were reacting, you gave them rhythm. Every text, every reply, every emotional response created a predictable beat they danced to. But when you stop, that rhythm dies, and silence. Silence feels like static. It's unsettling. It breaks their sense of control. They start to ask questions, not out of love, but out of loss of command. Why aren't they responding? Did they move on? Are they ignoring me? They go from leading the game to chasing understanding. Marcus Aurelius said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That's what withdrawal is. A retreat into your own soul. You step out of the chaos of emotional exchange and return to the one place they can't reach, your inner calm. It's not escape, it's recalibration. You start to remember your value, your rhythm, your standards. You stop feeding a connection that was starving you and start nourishing yourself. At first, it'll feel strange. You'll feel the urge to check their page, reply to their stories, send that "just wondering how you are" message. You'll tell yourself it's harmless, but deep down, you know it's not. Every small reach out reopens the door you were finally starting to close. Strategic withdrawal requires discipline. You must resist the temptation to break your own silence, because silence only grows powerful when it's consistent. Think of it like still water. When the surface is calm, it reflects everything with clarity. But if you keep stirring it, you distort the image. Your silence is that water. Each time you speak out of fear or restlessness, you lose the reflection, you lose the effect, so you hold your peace. You let them wonder, you let curiosity do what persuasion never could. And slowly, something changes. The person who once dismissed you begins to sense something missing in their days. They can't name it, but they feel it. That emptiness is your gravity in motion. You're not begging to be remembered. You're being remembered because you stopped begging. That's the paradox of withdrawal. The less you do, the more they feel. The less you explain, the louder your silence echoes. But let's be honest, it takes courage to sit in that quiet. You'll wrestle with doubts. You'll hear that inner voice whisper, "What if they forget me?" But ask yourself this: if they could forget you that easily, what were you really fighting to keep? True connection doesn't collapse because of silence. It deepens in it. If they truly valued you, they'll feel the void and return with clarity. If they don't, your silence just exposed the truth faster than your words ever could. My friends, strategic withdrawal isn't a trick. It's training. It's how you teach both yourself and others that your energy isn't cheap. You don't hand it out like samples, you protect it like currency. Because when your attention costs nothing, it earns no respect. But when your presence becomes rare, it becomes remembered. So write this in the comments: my silence has weight. Say it proudly, because from now on, your absence will speak for you. You're no longer reacting, you're recalibrating, you're no longer chasing, you're commanding space. And stay with me, because what comes next will reveal the secret behind this shift, the hidden law of attraction most people overlook, the power of unavailability. You'll see how being rare doesn't just make them notice you, it makes them question everything they thought they controlled. Number 6. The power of unavailability. When you stop being everywhere, that's when they finally start to look for you. There's something magnetic about absence, my friends, something quietly irresistible about a person who no longer tries to be seen. When you pull back your energy, you become scarce, and scarcity has value. It's not about playing games. It's about understanding a psychological truth that runs deeper than emotion. People chase what they can't predict, and they respect what they can't control. The more available you are, the less you're valued. But the moment you become rare, people start to listen differently. Think of gold. It's valuable not because it shouts for attention, but because it's hard to find. Everyone can touch stones, but few ever touch gold. And that's exactly how your presence should feel: limited, precious, earned. The mistake most people make after a breakup, rejection, or disappointment is staying too accessible. They keep the door half open, just in case. They like posts, respond to messages, leave traces online. They think it's harmless. But what they're really doing is training the other person to expect their attention on demand. And attention, my friends, is the most expensive currency you'll ever spend. When you give it freely, it loses its weight. When you withdraw it strategically, it creates gravity. Suddenly, the same person who once ignored your messages begins to wonder where you went. They start checking your stories. They start remembering your voice. Not because you reminded them, but because the silence reminded them. You've removed what was once guaranteed, and the human mind hates losing what it once took for granted. Here's the paradox. When you make yourself too available, people start to believe your energy has no cost. But when you disappear, even quietly, they feel the shift. They feel the absence of your validation, your reassurance, your warmth, and that vacuum starts pulling at them in ways words never could. That's why your unavailability is not coldness, it's clarity. It's saying, I'm not disappearing because I'm angry, I'm disappearing because I'm done auditioning. Epictetus said, how long are you going to wait before you demand the best for yourself? Being unavailable isn't about ignoring others. It's about demanding the best version of yourself. It's a statement. My energy is not for sale. My peace is not negotiable. You stop handing out emotional discounts to people who only showed up during the sale. You become selective, not because you're better than anyone else, but because you finally realize your energy builds worlds, and not everyone deserves to live in them. But here's the hard part. It feels unnatural at first. You'll feel guilty for pulling back. You'll feel fear creeping in, whispering, "What if they move on?" But that fear is an echo of your old identity, the one that believed being always available made you safe. It didn't. It made you predictable. And predictability kills attraction. Because when someone knows they can have you anytime, they stop appreciating the moments they do. But when they can't read you, when they can't predict your next move, curiosity replaces comfort. And curiosity, my friends, is the root of pursuit. Picture this. A person once had you on standby. You replied fast, you showed up, you explained. Now suddenly, you're silent. You're not rude, just still. Your absence becomes their new mirror. They refresh their notifications like they used to wait for yours. They scroll your feed, searching for signs of life. They start to post subtle things, hoping you'll notice. And when you don't, the pressure builds. Because silence breaks the ego's illusion of control faster than confrontation ever could. The beautiful irony? You don't have to prove you've changed. They'll feel it. You don't have to announce your unavailability. It'll echo in the quiet space you've left behind. They'll sense that something in you has shifted, that you're no longer orbiting them. You've become your own center of gravity. That energy is rare, it's powerful, it's stoic. But let me be clear, being unavailable isn't pretending not to care. It's caring deeply about yourself. It's protecting your time like a treasure, because you've learned that not everyone deserves a front row seat to your growth. You start to build mystery not by manipulation, but by mastery, by choosing to be where you are valued, not tolerated. And as your presence becomes scarce, your worth expands in their mind. They begin to miss the very things they once overlooked, the way you listened, the way you brought calm into their chaos, the way you made them feel seen. They'll replay conversations, scroll old messages, and realize that your absence isn't emptiness, it's consequence. So, write this in the comments right now. My energy is not free. Because it's not, my friends. You're not the discount version of love. You're not the backup plan or the emotional refill for someone running on empty. You are the rarity that becomes unforgettable the moment it's gone. Show them, show yourself. Show the world around you that your silence isn't withdrawal, it's refinement. You're stepping out of reach not to punish, but to preserve. Because when you master the art of being unavailable, something magical happens. People stop seeing you as an option and start realizing you were the opportunity. Stay with me, because what's coming next is the part they never see coming. The part where silence stops haunting you and starts haunting them. Where the quiet you built turns into the echo they can't escape. Number 7. The silence that haunts them. What once bored them will one day keep them awake at night. That's the secret no one tells you, my friends. Silence doesn't just disappear into nothing. It echoes. It lingers in the corners of their mind long after you've gone quiet. At first, they think you're bluffing. They've seen this before, haven't they? People go silent for a few days, then come crawling back with apologies and long explanations. But not this time. Not you. Because your silence isn't emotional manipulation, it's transformation. You've changed the rhythm, and they don't know how to dance to it anymore. At first, they feel nothing, maybe even relief. Finally, they think, peace and quiet. But peace is deceptive when you've built your power on someone else's reaction. A few days go by, and the emptiness starts whispering. They check their phone, not for love, but for control. No message, no like, no subtle sign that you're still orbiting them. The silence starts to feel heavier. It seeps into the spaces where your voice used to live. And that's when the haunting begins. You see, people don't miss you when you leave. They miss you when they realize you're not coming back the same. They miss the version of you they could count on, the one who forgave too fast, explained too much, and loved too loud. But that version is gone now. Silence buried it. What's left is someone they can't decode, can't predict, and can't reach on command. And that's what shakes them to their core. Imagine their mind like a room that used to be filled with music, your laughter, your presence, your responses. Now it's quiet. The silence becomes a mirror, forcing them to confront their own emptiness. Every time they reach for their phone, they see your name not appearing. Every night they scroll through old messages. The warmth they once took for granted now feels like a ghost that won't leave them alone. They start to wonder, did I push too far? Did I lose them for good? That's how silence wins, not through punishment, but through reflection. The Stoics understood this perfectly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best answer to anger is silence." And that truth extends beyond anger. It's the best answer to manipulation, disrespect, and indifference too. Because silence removes the audience from their performance. It leaves them talking to themselves. They can't project guilt onto you anymore. They can't twist your words. The play ends when the other actor leaves the stage. But I won't lie to you. It takes strength to hold the silence. There will be moments you want to reach out, to see if they've noticed, to prove you're still in control. But real power doesn't prove, it holds. You're not waiting for them to break. You're holding the line because that's what peace looks like. Your silence is no longer about them, it's about you. It's a boundary wrapped in composure. And that's what they start to feel. The calm they mistook for weakness becomes the mystery that keeps them awake. Because they can't control calm, they can't provoke stillness, they can't predict peace. You're no longer an emotional supplier. They're left to face their own shortage. And while they may not admit it, they start to realize how much they fed off your energy, how much of their confidence came from your attention, how much of their control depended on your reaction. Now, they get nothing. No proof, no reassurance, no comfort. Just the haunting silence of someone who finally remembered their worth. And that silence, my friends, is powerful enough to rewrite history. They'll tell themselves stories to fill the void. They'll imagine scenarios, craft excuses, replay conversations, and every version of the story ends with the same question: why did they stop trying? That's when the truth dawns on them. It wasn't that you stopped caring, it's that you started caring about yourself. You didn't vanish to punish them, you vanished to protect your peace. You didn't disappear to play games, you disappeared to stop playing theirs. And that realization cuts deeper than any revenge ever could. Because they can't argue with silence, they can't defend against indifference, they can only sit with the echo of what they lost. And you've evolved. You've turned pain into power, reaction into reflection, love into wisdom. You no longer chase closure, you become it. You no longer seek validation, you radiate it. The silence that once terrified you has become your fortress. So write this in the comments: my silence speaks for me. Say it with strength, because it does. Your calm is your weapon, your stillness is your signal, and your distance is your new standard. And if this message hit home, my friends, press the like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to remember their power. Let's build a world where people stop mistaking silence for weakness and start seeing it for what it really is: mastery. Because once you learn to speak through your silence, you'll never have to explain your worth again.